Hey, 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 welcome back. Welcome back to the Scorpio channel. Merry Christmas. I hope everyone that's celebrating Christmas is enjoying their Christmas. Doesn't really feel like Christmas here in Florida. No, my second Christmas without my husband. So it's still kind of feeling like transition time. Um, Christmas is a weird time. And it's a weird time because it's like the end of the year. You're thinking about everything that transpired in the year prior, but you're also thinking about what is to come, right? Because New Year's is right around the corner. And hopefully we've learned, hopefully we've healed, right? I mean, that's really what healing is. It's learning, it's seeing things from a different perception. Now, for those of you that are new to the channel, my name is Laura and I do shadow readings. So I look at everything because we want to know. We want to know what a person thinks and feels, obviously, but we want to know why. Because we tend to attract people that dig out our wounds, that make us look at our trauma, that make us like ruminate, right? Keep us thinking, keep us up in our head. And the problem with that is the more that you think and you can't come up with a solution on why people do what they do, the more negative energy that you wind up, creating, generating, because it's your thoughts and your emotions. Now, how do you manifest the thoughts that you think and the emotions that you have? So, what you'll notice is when something isn't working and you're holding on to whatever that is that's not working, and in this case, it's always relationships, right? Then what's happening is that you're really holding on to a core belief. You're really holding on to that reality. So it winds up you wind up seeing yourself as limited. So the readings are healing because it's not just what your person did do, what they're going to do, but it's how to handle it, why it's happening, so that you can always see that you never really lose. You either wind up in a good relationship or you learn, and you can learn without actually going through a negative experience if you're aware. See, a lot of times we're not aware. The whole thing is that we're stuck in a reality, and that reality is one that's not working. And that's what the shadows represent. That's what the spiritual blocks represent. So the more that we don't heal, from these experiences, the more energy that we hold on to that resonates with that experience until you really can't see any other perception, right? And so it's almost like when we want to know what spiritual warfare is, this is what spiritual warfare is. It's like a war with inside of your mind. And it's based on the fact that, you're judging yourself from your experiences, but not really who you are. See, there is no separation between you and God. God is all knowing, it's omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscience. So when you are in your God given energy, when you were born perfect. And you could tell because you were open to receiving, and that's because you weren't prejudiced. You didn't know anything. Even the way that you breathed was properly. It was diaphragmic breathing. It wasn't, neck breathing. It was, when you watch a baby breathe, you can watch the abdomen go up and down, which again, because that baby is relaxed, unless it grew up in an environment that was, so tumultuous, and not just born into it. If the mother was that way when she was pregnant, then obviously the baby, is going to be very sensitive to energy. My point is, it's the environment that creates the reality, but is that reality, can it be changed? Of course it can be changed because there's many different realities that play it at one time. So the fact that there's no separation between you and your creator, you can actually have any experience that you want. Just if you were healed, you probably wouldn't want the person that you're attached to. That's the irony. And a lot of times, once you see things from a different perception, you really don't want that person. That's the whole point. It's that the person represents something much bigger for our healing. And that's what shadow readings are. They let us, again, understanding why things are playing out in your life the way that they are. All right, so let's take a look at the underlining energy. The underlining energy always tells us why everyone does what they do, right? So when you're dealing with a person that has blockages, they get in their own way, we don't understand. Determination. No, and grief. And so what I feel like is that you're on a mission to create something in your life and you're determined, but that you feel like the closer that you feel like you're supposed to get to it, the more problems. Or just like almost like, why is it so hard? Why is it so difficult? And one of those problems is a connection that you're in. And when I say a connection that you're in, it's more like a person that's connected to you, because you're not really in a connection. Because if you were in a connection, the relationship would be, but it's almost like you're trying to create something within your life, something just for you. So that could be your stability. It's where you are just within yourself. And it's like the closer, like I said, that you get to it, you just feel like, God, like it's getting hard. It's getting hard, but you're determined. And I feel like this person that you're connected to can feel it. And they're afraid that once you move on, you'll be rid of them. And so their way is to keep the relationship in a place of disequilibrium, which is imbalance, which if you then stay imbalanced, well, by holding back, by making you mad, by making you, whatever, because that's the only way that this person can take you off your track, because you're determined. So what can take you off your track if this person can emotionally trigger you, right? So they don't know whether you still have a connection to them. I feel like you're in separation from them. And the fact is that this person's hostile. And they're hostile because you seem a little too okay with the separation. And it's not that you're okay, you're channeling that energy. It's like this person's ignorant and they're just ignorant, right? Because it's, again, instead of coming clean and saying, hey, I regret the way that I treated you, because hey, that would require them to be different, you see? So, this person wants to, again, pretend that like the connection's really hopeless because they want to avoid the blame game. And they want to avoid the blame because then they'd have to change, right? So that's the thing. It's almost like, how am I going to manipulate you? How am I going to manipulate you? If I haven't talked to you and I don't know how you're feeling and I don't want to seem vulnerable, it kind of seems like a lot, right? For a person to do. But, let's take a peek and see what this, cards got wet. And see like what your person, what they feel. Where are they right now? Like what's the point? Like, and that got so wet. I pulled away because I am overwhelmed with all the things going on in my life. So, I always say that a person that, has a lot of drama in their life is someone that you see their life kind of looks like a roller coaster. So you might have met this person when things were in an uphill, where things were going good for this person. But if they're not a spiritually evolved person, they let the ego run the show. So it's like they might have had a good business, they might have been in a good stable place, but they're not anymore. And they don't like for anyone to see that again. So this person needs time. And mainly because whatever's going on in their life is like falling apart. It's not working. And so that could be their job, something having to do with, like I said, their stability. And so, can't obviously let you into their life that way. I will find my way back to you. So they feel like once I get my life on track, I'll make my way back to you. Now, you might be like, well, who's to say that I'm going to be around? I don't really feel like this person even thinks about that because of what's going on in their life. So it's like they're living more from a survival mode. This is someone that life looks like a roller coaster because what they build their life on is usually, things that are superficial, whether it's, you know, uh, money, whether it's, a relationship without them really getting to know that relationship. It's not built on truth. See, when a relationship is built on truth, it's because both people are truthful and they know who they are themselves without being, in the relationship. This person, like, it wants to avoid blame, but really, relationships, when you talk about problems, you create intimacy, right? And so intimacy is trust. This person, they're not a trustworthy person. So to let you into their life, they'd have to be transparent. And most likely you wouldn't like what you would see, but down deep inside, this person wants to work things out. That's why they feel like, well, when my life gets fixed, is it a reality? Again, I have sexual fantasies about you. So that makes sense because it's like, well, what if they're not? I feel like because this person doesn't really have much of a, I want to say like an identity, because when our life is falls apart, we have to actually build the life back. And usually it's just based on trying to get financially sound, trying to get, so relationships are something that happen over time. Trust is something that happens over time. This person never really cares, but the fact that you're in separation and they find you attractive and they're going through shit, I can see, okay, so they focus on you as a way of like avoiding what what they're going through. So it's a way of escapism. So the problem with this is that they still have not taken the time to get to know you. But will they think that they really have feelings for you? Yes. But this is what narcissism kind of like looks like. And I say this because it's like narcissists, their life looks like roller coasters. There's a feeling of, unworthiness. There's a lot of self-sabotage, and it doesn't mean that they don't have feelings. They have feelings, but being that the relationship is so surface, you know, trust and intimacy is something that happens over time. It's so you build that strong connection. But if this person only keeps things surface, it's all about the physical, well, then it's easy for them to betray, right? Because, hey, then they get caught up in what they want. But what the fact is that you're in separation, they're going through shit. So they're staying away from you, but they're actually detached from whatever they're going through and they're focused on you. So again, it's like they want to fix things, but do they want to fix things for the right reason? Well, this person won't have an identity, is like what I'm trying to get at. Like their life is falling apart. So it doesn't mean that they're not leaving a connection, if that's what it is. And it doesn't mean that if they didn't lose their job, all those things happened. But the issue is not that they don't have feelings for you. They do. But if they only know how to treat themselves a certain way, they're not, and they don't want to take the time to actually do the healing work because there's too many things to deal with. The conversations that you would need to be able to have with a person where they're not going to get triggered, because this person did all this to avoid blame. They have feelings for you, but they want to avoid blame. So their ego is running the show because they don't want to have the tough conversations of, if you care about me so much, why do you want to like cheat on me? Why do you want to leave me? Why do you want, it's like, why do you, because they don't know, and that's the thing. It's like you have a Jekyll and Hyde almost like type of connection. So you're like, I know that it's real sometimes, but then it looks like that. which is all the fragmentations, and why what makes it very confusing, because it's like, well, the person does have feelings. It's again, and you'll even feel like it's a divine union. Like, this is my person. And it's like, and that person feels it too. But if a person doesn't believe that they're deserving of it, which is what you see when a person is like a narcissist, you want to know what created that. That's fragmentation. So it's not like the person can't have feelings and they don't really have love, but they never learned how to, treat themselves, right? So it's not that they don't find everything about you appealing, but again, it's putting you on a pedestal instead of actually taking the time to get to know you. So it's either I put you on a pedestal or I rip you down. There's no, you know, uh, middle of the road. So what happens is it's like you would really need, this person needs to take time to be by themselves for a while. And I feel like they actually know that, where they're like, I think I need to be single for a little while and like type and regroup, because their life is continuously like, getting out of something, recreating it for it to not work out. So it's like, now if I have feelings for you, you're my divine union, and you don't like what you see, because again, part of me isn't showing you everything, then you're going to leave. And that would hurt me so much more, because it's real. So there's this element of that, which is, if I don't like me, then for sure I'm going to think that you're going to leave. And so, all I really know how to do is like, it's, we get swept up and get caught up in the romance. But the problem with that is it's shallow. It becomes like, it feels like a fling. That's what it feels like. And it doesn't mean that the person doesn't have feelings for you. It's like, that's their level of intimacy, which is trust, right? That's that second chakra. It's all about, you know, our unique individuality, how we feel about ourselves, how well can we go with the flow of life. It's the passion center. Like, our perception of ourselves is connected to our passions, to the things that we're interactive in, right? It's our connection to God. Too much coffee, sorry. I'm like, oh, like, it's our connection to God. It's how we give and receive of love. It's how we become the energy of love. And so your divine union helps you become that energy, but it doesn't mean that this person is not, like, all the wounds aren't coming out. Of course they're coming out. With a divine union, that's what a divine union is supposed to do. God says, oh, yeah, everybody focuses on the passion and on the, because clearly there is, but that's not, passion is fire, and fire helps transmute those second chakra blockages, which are in the, birthing center. And birthing isn't just about having a baby, but is birthing whatever you're trying to create within your life. And for this person, it's a life that they stop sabotaging themselves. For you, we don't know, and we haven't gotten there yet, but there's healing there, because God says, well, the you with this person would not be coming into your life. It's designed to make you mad. It's designed to bring all that shit out. And then still, like, but I still have feelings for that person. So they make me feel like I'm a fucking crazy person. And Spirit says, yes, because love will make you feel like you're mad, make you feel like you're crazy, because all that needs to come out is to help you to, heal. But it doesn't mean that it's easy. It's what happens is it becomes very like intense, and it's confusing, because it's like there's so many feelings and emotions that go on. And so it's designed, the divine union is designed for that, where Spirit says, well, there's a lot of repressed energy. Oh, you think that that's part of you, but that's not part of you. Created that due to what's happening in your life, but it's blocking things that are supposed to be happening in your life, because there's a disbelief. So, and your relationship is a reflection of that. So you're like, why does it fucking look like that? And God says, the reason why is because it doesn't look like me. So I'm showing you what it looks like to me. And you're like, I don't look like that. And Spirit says, no, look at the wounds that it triggers. Look at the what it stirs up inside of you. That whirlwind is that. It's Promethean fire. It's there is passion, but there's also pain. A lot of pain and a lot of anger and a lot of resentment. And that does not come from just a relationship. God says that was there before the relationship. I had to bring in the relationship to show you what I don't like and why you're like, there's certain shit in my life that's not working. And the Spirit says, yes. But how do you think I'm going to show you? I'm going to show you through your experiences. Well, I don't like what's happening here. And this is your fault. And God says, it's not my fault. I gave you free will. And it's like, I didn't choose that. It's like you just chose unconsciously. So I'm showing you through the experience. We're always having a relationship, God says, because God says, I'm omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscience. I'm inside of you. So when you can't flow because you have a block in that second chakra, it means that you have a perception of yourself that I didn't make. I don't know who that version is. I don't know what that is. That's not, you design that yourself. That's why it looks that way. It's like, that's why it's, you know, not working. It's like, understand your shining star, your shining star. You have a destiny, Spirit saying you're important. See, again, the lack of knowing who you are is a sign of that relationship where really Spirit saying it's like, hey, trust the universe's plan. Follow your heart. You have a destiny. It's like there's a bigger meaning to life. So, and part of that is whenever you've gone through like really difficult experiences, God says, well, there's a story of who you think you are. Then there's this real story of who you truly are. I work my glory through the most broken aspects of you. You would never see a different perception of yourself. And also, I have to do that in front of your enemies. There are a lot of fucking people that are fucked up. So I want to show them that they don't know what the hell they're talking about. It's like, so you just have to have faith. And so, it's not really about the relationship. It's about saying how do I hold myself? What do I do, believe that I'm worth? And if you're connected to someone that's making you feel bad about yourself, well then obviously you put the energy into yourself, which I feel like again that's how your reading started. Remember, you're determined because you're almost like I don't care about your issue anymore. I don't care what because you're in your ego. You avoided me because you don't want the blame. You don't want to do the work. You don't want to, but that's not my problem. So I'm going to put that Promethean fire, which is again, all that energy, the pain, the happiness, the passion, and I'm going to channel it into birthing something new. This person can feel that. It's like, but Spirit's saying it's like, but you know that you have a destiny. So it doesn't mean that that person is not, a divine counterpart. Remember, like it takes lifetimes, a lot of times for these relationships to unfold. And that is if you were brought up in an environment where, let's just say you were abused, we're going to look, but I'm just saying, where you grew up around some sort of trauma where, hey, you were smushed. God says, hey, like I didn't make that version of yourself, but the environment did. So I had to continuously bring you situations to help you peel away those old versions of yourself, which is not a pleasant experience, by the way, because you're like, who am I? like, or like, why don't I have any friends all of a sudden? Or why am I here? Why can't I create stability? And God says, because we're going up to the penthouse. We were in the basement, and so you're going to meet people that are on the same floor as you. And they can't go up where you're going, a lot of them, because they haven't done the work. Again, you have a destiny. You have a purpose. And this person can feel it. So from a spiritual issue, I feel like this person, because they're in negative energy, and if you're determined to create something and they're trying to hold you back, and understand nothing can stop you. However, the emotional connection, and that spirit's saying, so watch out, because you already know that this person is not a healed person. They would actually be jealous. So again, strong roots. They never really created the strong roots, right? And strong roots is what creates stability in a relationship. That's when you show up for the person. That's when you're considerate of the other person's feelings, emotions. So thing is, it's like this person never allowed that. So there's a lot of resentment. There's a lot of, so it could never be at this point. So that energy is being channeled like properly, which is good, because let me tell you something, energy that we hold on to, that is anger like that, well, it creates cancer, it creates other negative energies. We become attracted to that. I feel like this person is a little bit like misery loves company. It's not that they don't have feelings for you, but they're getting hostile because, hey, you're moving on and you're going to leave me behind, but I haven't given you anything. What is that? And that's why I'm saying, and then really, this person cheated, shows that they weren't faithful, that, instead of like being able to have a conversation, it was like you felt like you had to get into an argument with this person in order for them to really have that. And they wanted to always like dominate you, and then seem to do whatever they wanted to do when they wanted to do it, which over time just made you feel like you didn't even belong. Like with like, there was, because it ruined the intimacy. Trust is intimacy. So this person's mighty fine if you're not going to like share your deepest feelings and thoughts and emotions, so that they don't have to show up, but they want that physical connection, which keeps it in this, again, no strong roots. Again, yeah, and so it's easy for them to cheat. It's easy for them. So it's very selfish energy. So again, it doesn't mean that this person doesn't have feelings, but like I said, I felt narcissist. And I told you that right from the beginning. I said this person, or maybe halfway through, that the energy was there because of really how they feel about themselves, but they'll be with somebody and break them down, and then, not like the version that they created, is what the issue is. And that's what makes it so hard, because it's not like the person doesn't have feelings. They do, strong feelings, but they don't, it's like they don't know how to handle it. They punish you for having those feelings. And over time, it's like this person knows that they need to heal. They know it, because, hey, my life is a reflection, the fruits of a person's life, what they produce is, when you look around, like their friends, like the type of work that they do, like everything that contributes to like a person, and a person like that doesn't like themselves. They can pretend that they're someone that they're not for a certain amount of time, but it's not going to stick. What'll happen is eventually, like, they have to create a new reality. So, what's most important here isn't even about whether this person comes back, it's about your healing. Why did you attract this person into your life? You're a mirror of who and what comes into your life. So, what do you need to learn? Because that's really the most important. It's like, because you can't figure out a narcissist, is the moral to the story in this story anyway. But I think any narcissist you can, because you don't know what they went through. You don't know why they're being triggered. And you just know, if you're going to be with someone like that, that they're going to create a lot of hypervigilance with inside of you. You get sick being with someone like that. And that they're going to gaslight and do everything to not create the intimacy, and then try to live that double life. So we have to look at your wounds. That's, again, the most important thing. Why did this happen? Why? And always the transmutation process. We're going to put those over there. And when we look, we see rage, suppression, self-love, source, gifts, neglect, lies and secrets, rebellions. So when we look at the inner child wounds, obviously growing up with a parent that's really like angry all the time, what happens is then we feel like, did I do something wrong? Like, because of the way that the parent is yelling at them and talking, when meanwhile the parent could just have anxiety, or they could just be a really angry person and needed to do their own healing. Nevertheless, again, having that like is a form of being around someone that suppresses you, because it's like, I might say the wrong thing. If I say the wrong thing, this person's going to like, bite my head off. I'm terrified. And so, what happened is like, you felt that love was conditional on some level. Like, if I'm good, then, I get love. But in that, if I'm not, I get neglected. So I kind of have to, feel out whether or not this person is going to be happy with my decisions before I actually share. Otherwise, there's punishment there. And so understand, over time, you're not really taught to like love yourself. And that's also watching how, if your parents aren't really less loving themselves, right? When we grow up in an environment where our parents needed healing and they're treating us a certain way, well, we're watching how they treat themselves, number one. And then we're also, if we're talked to not nicely, we're also then perceiving that that's kind of what we deserve. Even if though we know that we don't deserve it, we begin to get used to it, I should say. And so having to do anything, really, you had to kind of lie. You had to, kind of make it a secret, because hey, it was just safer to deal with it. Otherwise, you had to deal with this parent. And so over time, you just felt like you weren't, I want to say, like, safe, supported, really, when you're around that energy. So we detach in order to deal with that. So you had a very close connection to source. And when you're close to source, there's a lot of spiritual gifts that you actually have. And that just is the psychic connection, the intuitive connection, because a child that doesn't really feel safe, where do they go? They go up in their head, they go into their imagination. So again, they tend to feel a lot safer that way than actually being around a parent that they don't know what that parent's going to do, because the parent seems, okay one second, not okay the next. If they're getting angry all the time to the point that the child's suppressing themselves. So it's like, when you're around that environment, you can get used to it, even if you're not comfortable with it. But the trauma is what you remember. So being connected to this kind of person brings up a lot of the same energy, like, is what I'm feeling. And then that's going to bring out even more wounds, right? And so some of those wounds are within the crown chakra. And there's a block within the crown chakra. It's like, even though you have gifts and you're intuitive, you're ignoring them, really, because it's like, I don't know what to do. I don't feel safe, and it shows up as, a sense of disconnection from the divine, when really you're a very spiritual person. But if you're not feeling safe, then it's spirit saying, because I'm inside of you and I'm always telling you. And I tell you through claircognizance, which is, I don't know how I know that. I just know it's that connection to, you know, spirit. And otherwise, what happens is it's just a lack of faith, is what spirit's saying. And that's because, hey, I've been living the same experience. So, and spirit saying that's because that's was the reality that you grew up in. And so, which is what you identify with love, because there was love there. It's just that parent was like you just had to watch, and so what winds up happening is you form a lot of wounds, and those wounds are like would could be like a little bit of a fear of well, here it says coping methods, like unhealthy coping mechanisms. So you can rely on, distractions. So that could be other people, it could be substances, it could be eating, it could be shopping, it could be, again, anything that you do to access to deal with not feeling safe. And really, that's what happens when you have a crown chakra and you're disconnected from the higher self. Then what happens is you tend to, base your life on past experiences, your family's experiences, and just experiences that you've, witnessed yourself. The connection to God is that higher self that's all knowing, that there is no separation between you and the higher self. And Spirit says, you have that gift because you grew up in fear. And a child that survives it becomes very sensitive. And that clear sentience is what connects us to clear cognizance. And Spirit says, but you don't listen to it. And so, and then as a way, you have to do outside things to deal with it, and then that makes you feel bad. It makes you feel bad about yourself, which there is no need to. It's a perception. The spirit says like when really it's a lack of boundaries a lot of times. And so, if you grew up with a parent that was angry all the time, you weren't allowed to have boundaries. So again, that survival is that. So maybe entering into a relationship too nice, expecting people to treat you the way that you want to be treated because you treat them a certain that way. Again, spirit says, no, no, no. It's like it's not about that. You didn't have boundaries. You weren't allowed to have boundaries. So being with a narcissist, well, they're going to do everything to challenge your boundaries. It's like, so you better have good boundaries. The universe brings you what you need at the level so that you need to have it. So it's again, it's not that this person doesn't have feelings. That's why it's complicated. It's like they do, but they have a lot of behaviorisms that are bad. And what you know is that you wouldn't be happy. So boundaries is that. And so this person says, well, again, that's the second chakra imbalance. They don't really believe that you're going to have those boundaries. And they have a hard time with boundaries. They want to be dominant. Remember, and what's the trauma? You were suppressed. You weren't like you were smushed. So God's saying, of course, like this is like the reoccurring theme, that this karmic cycle of, oh my God, I'm going to wind up with. And Spirit says, not if you don't listen to your gut. It's again that. So what we see is the blockages, and that blockage was first in the root chakra. And so that solar plexus shows up as, again, boundaries, and as well as, you know, feeling disconnected from passion or desire, and not, or maybe not even knowing what that 100% is. And that's what will happen if you're around people that are really aggressive and tell you who you are. But I feel like you are unblocking that chakra because, hey, you're determined at this point. But Spirit says if you have faith, it'll be a little bit easier. It's the disconnect, because I mean, we can't make this shit up, because you grew up with a narcissist and this person's a narcissist. So, you already know what it looks like, Spirit says. So, you have the wounds from growing up that way. And so I wanted, this is a test. Now you don't have to participate in the test either. Be like, I'm not interested, but this person's coming in, whether you want them to or not, to try and throw you off because you're having a little bit too much of a good time. And like, how dare you? So that's what a narcissist does. And so God says that they can't do anything. They can only, again, emotionally try and throw you off your track. Will show up as cycles of manipulation, control, you know, uh, devaluation, again, wearing you down, like what narcissists do, to try and, take your self worth, which is what narcissists do. But they don't get the person that way. They pick a person that they're like, oh, I like everything that you are, but they can't be with a person like who you are. They're not strong enough. But God says, do you know who you are? I don't care about that person, but do you know who you are? Because I'm inside of you as a gift of the Holy Spirit, and you're the one that's driving the bus. So I'm a little bit nervous because this person's a little too confident. They don't like boundaries. And you're not, let's see how great you are with your boundaries, because like sometimes you're not. Like people make you feel bad. People make you feel this way. And if you're overreacting, you get mad, well, then you're going to feel guilty about that too. You have to find your balance. Say that's again what we talk about. Balance is a second chakra thing. So it's like that's the emotional center as well. So that's why this person's like, I'm going to try and emotionally come in like that. And so it's spirit saying, now this person has a problem like with giving mutual respect. They really are a narcissist, and that's what you grew up with, and that's why you're getting it. And understand this person wants to like it's almost like if I can't have you, no one will. Like it's kind of like a little bit like that energy. I'm not gonna lie, because it's almost like I want to like mess you up mentally, put you in a place of despair. That's because it's like they're angry. It's like you didn't act the way that they wanted you to act. You're not doing what they want you to do. They have no control. And the hostility is that. And so spirit's like, this is like just a karmic blockage that needs to come out. And the karmic blockage is again because you grew up that way. So you need to be able to integrate it and pass the test. This person is like just a test. You don't need to pass the test. You already have gifts. Spirit says you're close to source. You're divinely protected. This person's, of course, they're going to try and make you mad. They're also because they're mad. So that's the energy that you have to deal with. That is like, you're going to run from it, or you're going to like look at it head on, is what spirit says. Because, we can't, when an energy like that is a narcissist, we know that it's also like a spiritual thing, that real negative spirits have taken over that person. Like it's again, what happens with detachment and fragmentation, that it draws in negative spirits, where the person again is they're not happy with themselves. They hate themselves. Narcissists don't like themselves. That's why they pick people that they're like, oh, I like you, and you're really giving, and you're really nice, and you're really sweet, and how is that going to be for me? Everything is like through that perception, because that person didn't get, or if they overgot, it was like either they were spoiled rotten, or they didn't get anything, second chakra imbalance. So they never created themselves. So like you can't try and figure it out, but you can say, what does it bring up within you? And what it brought up in you is, well, I grew up with this energy. And spirit says, so you already know. That's again close to source, that knowing, clear cognizance, you already know. It's like, yeah, but we still have a connection. They really do care about me. God says, I don't care. You already know. It's like, and are you gonna listen to it? Because this person is like, maybe you won't. Maybe you won't. And remember, you're creating something. You're picking up momentum. You're determined. And so if you don't think that is a play on why this person wants to all of a sudden come back and trip you up, believe me, it is. It's like, because, hey, you're going to move on and have a better life. and leave this person in the dust. And they weren't thinking that. They if anything, they thought that, well, you'd come back, that this was a break, that this wasn't like real, that they could have you whenever they wanted. I mean, and what you showed them is that's not true. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Where spirit says, listen, you needed to alchemize the energy. It's like, and which you have to go through the negative experience. I know it was scary, again, narcissist energy, but there were things that you needed to alchemize, and that was turn pain into power. So, and yes, part of it is like, it's faith. It's like the walking in part, because thinking that this person is your person too, because hey, you do have feelings, that there is a strong spiritual connection, past life connection, but spirit's saying, again, choosing you, which is saying, I have limitless potential. It's like, why are you gonna be with someone that makes you feel like you don't have limitless potential? The only limit would be the ones that you impose on yourself, and being next to that person, they would do it. Spirit says this is about, again, yes, not being with this person, knowing that yes, it was part of your path, and part of your path to help find exactly what you want, but and understand, to also know that you are on the right path. It's just the road that's less traveled. So it's like, it's what I feel, it's how I feel. I'm being brave enough to maybe not really have a destination right now, and I'm allowing myself to find that. Where spirit says, well, you might need to do that if you grew up with a narcissist that suppressed you. It wouldn't be, you know like, not the right thing to do. It would be the correct thing to do, and to have faith and know that that things are better. Again, that you can have whatever it is that you want. The disillusion is that you can't. And so we alchemize the energy, and that turns pain into power. And spirit says, and know that you're like protected, and that it was all about releasing the limited beliefs that no longer serve you. It's like growing up with an angry parent that's like a narcissist, you're going to do whatever it takes to survive. But spirit says that really wasn't you. You weren't really allowed to find yourself. Like in the Bible, it says, be like childlike, because children go out and they find themselves. They get an idea of what they like, what they don't like. Right away, right from the get-go, you were taught, don't trust. It's not safe. It's like, I got to watch what I say. I got to watch what I do. It's like spirit says it was compromising. You were taught wrong. So I was inside of you. That's why, again, you had a close connection to source, which is God. And God said, I was the one. That's the poem footprints. I was carrying you during that time. You didn't know because you were like in survival. But understand, you have gifts, and you got to know what your worth is. You don't know your worth. And I'm going to bring you this person, and we're going to see whether or not you pass the test. And you're going to pass the test, you're going to be with narcissist. Let's see. Do you love yourself? Because I don't know whether you, again, learned really who you are. Do you know who you are? It's, again, that you're not who you thought you are. You're something much better than that. It's like, again, but you have to own it. God says you have to embody that energy, and not afraid either, because this person's coming in the way that they are, and the spirit says they can't do anything. So it's also going up against that difficult energy of, oh God, it's like just a person that likes to like create drama, problems. They don't get their way. They get loud. It's very uncomfortable. But spirit says yes, but boundaries. So don't let the person overstimulate you. Spirit says it's all about returning to the heart. Breathe light and stick to the essentials for your soul, and be in the present moment. You calm your thoughts, you focus on your heart, and you find space to be where your light and your greatness are, and you find peace in your inner silence. So Spirit saying, like, this person's gonna try and like throw you off your track. Focus on, like, again, what your path, that what you're doing. You're determined to create success. You're determined to create something. Spirit says, when they come in, you focus on that shit. You don't focus on whatever they say. Nothing. You give them nothing. You focus on your heart. You focus on your passion. You focus on, you return to that. Understand, because they can't disrupt your peace, because your peace is where that is what where you love. You don't love this person. This person showed you a sign of who they are, but that it was a familiarity. Spirit says everything turns to light. Understand, I work to improve and embrace all that life brings me to help me transform the darkness into light. And Spirit says it was clearly to, like, you had blockages from growing up in that environment. And I needed to show you where they were. I mean, this is a big deck, and that's pretty much like the narcissist card. It's like, I need to, like, you grew up in a certain environment that made you believe certain things about yourself that weren't true, is what Spirit's saying. And it's like, and that's because of how your parents were raised, and that's what was going on collectively and other things. But nevertheless, it's like it was binding you to, blocking you to, like, being able to create, where really nothing can stop you. And there's a part of you that's like, I know this. And Spirit says, yeah, and that person is like, that's connected to you, is watching that too. And that's why they're pissed off. It's like, again, that they're like almost I have anxiety about it happening. And that's because it's like, I lose control. On some level, I want to still see whether I have control. And Spirit says, no one has control. Only you do. So keep your focus on what you're passionate about and give nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean no emotion, nothing. Because this person's coming in to try and, like, feel you out. Because there's a part of them that wants a second chance, but they're not going to say that. They're going to do is they're going to try and create, like, oh, some bullshit. And understand, you'd be like, I would never go for that. This person doesn't give a shit. They're going to do everything that they need to do to protect their real feelings. And that is why you can't, because they will never let the relationship go that deep. And that's why Spirit says they can't do anything, but they feel you move on, and you are. And it's all yours. Spirit says infinite possibilities. Only you can block you. You can be like, I don't trust me. And Spirit says, snap out of it. Get back into your body. It's again, and maybe again, getting a better connection to your body, because people can feel that when you're not strong within yourself. Again, where they can just throw you off. And people that grew up with a narcissist, well, unfortunately, it affects their nervous system. You can't live hypervigilant as a child and think that it's not going to affect your relationships later on in life. It's going to. And Spirit's saying you have to rewire. It's again, and part of rewiring is, in order to deal, you detached. You were not in your body. You were in with Source, with God. That means you were in your brain. You weren't in your body. Didn't feel good to be around that. You were terrified. So, but Spirit's saying it. So that's not going to help you when you have to be present. You have to be in the moment. You have to be, because again, when you're in your body, that's when you can feel God through gut, intuition, inner knowing. That's when you get the guidance. Not when you're in your head and your daydream. You're in the daydream land. And Spirit's saying that's what's going to make you feel disconnected from Source. And you had a crown chakra block, when meanwhile Spirit says that doesn't make any sense, because you were with me the whole time. So if you're with me the whole time in childhood, why would there be a block within that crown chakra? And that's because of other people. It's again where Spirit's saying it's no one can do anything. Only you can. It's again the focus. isn't on that. This person's in victim state consciousness. It's like, oh, they're stuck. They're stuck. You put them in a position where they have to be vulnerable. They don't want to do it. They're angry over it. How dare you? Then it's a narcissist. You can't figure it out. But this was more about you going through the experience so you could see yourself differently. Like, guess what? No one can take my energy. I have full control over my energy. I say what goes in my life. And if it's not good, I get rid of it. It's like, and there's not a damn thing that you can do about it. And you're not going to mess up my opportunity. Because growing up with a narcissist, unfortunately, that parent gets into competition with the child. And it's because they never created. So they don't have the identity. So again, growing up suppressed is whatever what was happened to them, and so they repeat that cycle. So for you, it's all about, staying true to yourself and understand that when we go through these experiences, it's just to help you alchemize, turn that pain into power, is what Spirit says. That's how you embody the new consciousness. All right. Merry Christmas. If you resonated, give the video a like. Thanks for sharing your energy with me. And until next time, be true to you. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.